everybody. This is Audra Kingery, and I will be presenting the second part of our presentation on Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model of human development. I'll be talking about how this concept, this theory, and the knowledge of it can influence what we do in our classrooms, either as teacher or as counselor. So the first idea that I want to present is this idea of the homeschool connection. And this is the collaboration between parents and teachers. And for anybody who works in a school setting, we know that it's incredibly important to have our parents involved in what is happening in the school building. These two environments are interrelated, and that connection can happen in a variety of ways. The most common and really the easiest is through different methods of communication. So I know in our building, a lot of teachers use an app called ClassTag to communicate even daily with families, with updates, with newsletters. Our principal sends a weekly newsletter. We have texts that go out from the district level. We have a Facebook page. I mean, there are so many ways that we communicate with our parents. Another way that they're interrelated is through the influence of one environment over the other. We know that what is happening at school, whether a student had a good day or a bad day, influences their life at home. And we absolutely know that their home lives affect what happens in the classroom. It's if we talk about their metaphorical backpacks, they're not just putting books in those backpacks. Some kids are coming in with huge backpacks full of trauma and chaos, and others come in light because they are supported. And so that home environment really influences what we see in the classroom. And then even more strongly, a parent's direct involvement in the school setting. Are they having conversations with their students about what they're learning at school? Is the parent coming in for class parties? Are they attending PTO meetings? Are they signing their kid up for the volleyball team and then showing up at the games? The more a parent is directly involved in school, the more likely the student is going to reach higher academic achievement. So for us who work with these students, this is what can be really kind of tricky. We know through research that it's higher SES households, higher SES families are the ones who are more likely to be more directly involved. And so it is our responsibility to reach out to those lower socioeconomic households to find ways to bridge the gaps to help them get into our buildings more. Is it a transportation issue? Is it a time issue? What is it that we need to help them overcome so that they can be more directly involved? So that's something that is a consideration for this interconnectedness between the home and school environment. The second concept I want to talk about is this one of our class as a family. This book cover that I have over here is a book I've seen in many, many of our classrooms this school year. And so teachers are working really hard to build that classroom culture. That we're not just a group of people who happen to exist in one space, but we are interconnected. And so then we're really seeing that microsystem at work. It's not just the immediate family. It's my classmate who's sitting at this table with me. It's my teacher who's involved with me. It's, the kid who stands behind me in the lunch line. And so, we're creating these dynamics within our classrooms. Our textbook tells us that it's up to the teachers to provide this caring, predictable structure. And this is especially important for those who come from unstructured home lives. We, just as people, but especially our students, we need that structure so that we can be at our best, so that our brains can be regulated, all of our systems can be connected, and we can do our best learning. As I was reading through our chapter on Bronfenbrenner, I was looking at those parenting styles, and I started to reflect on how they are tied, especially authoritarian and authoritative, to teaching styles. And so if we consider this authoritative parenting style of setting clear limits, having high expectations, enforcing the rules, but still being warm and supportive, that's something that we see in a lot of classrooms. And that leads to healthy children, and it also leads to higher functioning students. And so that role of a teacher is important on the child's development within the classroom. continuing this idea of our class as a family, the way we interact with our children affects their development. So those of us who work with littles, we know you can just read their mood when they walk into the building. And so you kind of could have your own tone of the day set by the way a friend comes into your classroom. So how it's this bidirectional interaction, how children act affects how they're treated. So maybe if one of my little friends walks in and the expression on their face says, "Do not mess with me today," or "It's all going to go down," that's going to affect my approach with that student. Hopefully for the better. I might be ready to help them handle whatever they're facing, but it might also trigger me. And so that's something that I'm seeing, unfortunately, in one of my classrooms. It's kind of the cycle where a student and their teacher escalate each other. And so that's a perfect example of that bidirectional interaction. Another consideration for this idea of our class as a family is the other students really pick up on how we treat and how we talk about other students in their classroom. So it's really important that we are modeling respect, that we have, we maintain the other person's dignity, no matter how old they are. We're maintaining dignity, that when we're having those correctional conversations about discipline, we're having those privately, that we're watching our tone when we're talking to a particular child directly. Because as the adults in the building, as the teachers, as the counselors, we are influencing the development of friendships. We are setting the tone for how peers can treat each other. And so this kind of ties back to this idea of recess duty. When we're watching them develop these friendships, especially in early elementary levels, on the playground, in that unstructured playtime, when the kids' true behaviors come out, we can be ready to mitigate instances of rejection and aggression. For those kids who, like, I have a young friend in my school who's having a really hard time keeping his hands to himself. And so some of his classmates are becoming fearful of him. And so, we have that responsibility. I, as his counselor, have that responsibility to step in and to work collaboratively with all the kids to make sure that he's treating them well, but also that he's treated well and with dignity too. I wanted to take a slide to talk about the chrono system specifically, and particularly in reference to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because even though this was 3 years ago, we are still seeing those impacts. We're still seeing increasing negative behaviors as a result, in a lot of cases, of the collective trauma that we all went through. Our teachers, even though things are kind of returning to normal, it's almost like we're putting all of the things back on their plates at the same time. And so our teachers have a higher stress response. They're not at their normal baselines. And so they can have that stress response a little more quickly to triggers that wouldn't normally impact them. And so all of this together has negative impacts on learning. And this is, considering the chrono system, this was, one snapshot in time. This was one, I guess, season, if you will, one school season when we were directly affected by COVID, by distance learning, but we're still seeing this play out in our classrooms. Fortunately, though, there are some mitigating factors. So our staff has had increased social emotional learning training so that they have the tools to give to the students to do more direct lessons with their students, to help their students stay regulated, to help even at that ground level combat feelings of anxiety. We're getting more mental health support for staff, more opportunities to talk about staff wellness and to support them in authentic ways and truly helpful ways, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, take some time to take care of yourself." We're finding things that actually work. And then also increased mindfulness practices in the classroom. When teachers are trained in mindfulness and know how to have students practice mindfulness within the classroom. It has many benefits, not only emotionally, but also academically, because we can get students doing their best thinking and doing their best learning when they feel calm, when they feel safe, and when they're present in the moment. And finally, I have a few additional considerations for how thinking through Bronfenbrenner's model influences what we do with our students, again, especially at the lower elementary level. One thing that we know, I think this is a Harry Wong concept for those of you who are in the classroom and are familiar with that name. We know that effective teachers increase the academic growth of their students. And this is even, it does not matter, like those effective teachers, it doesn't matter if it's a poor quality school environment. If they have good classroom management, if they have high expectations for their students, if they are effective teachers, they will lead their students to higher outcomes. And so that's a direct, the quality of the educator has a direct impact on the development of the student. Another thing to consider is that what's happening in our lives as the adults in the building can impact our students. And so, that's looking at those outer levels of the system, the exosystem. If we're dealing with ongoing illness, of maybe ourselves or a close family member, that's absolutely going to affect what's happening. If one of our teachers is going through a divorce or is grieving the loss of a close friend or family member, they're coming in carrying a lot of emotional weight. And so that is going to impact how they are in the classroom. And their students are going to pick up on that. It's like we talked about on a previous slide, it's bidirectional. We can't always set those things aside when we step into our classrooms. And then finally, I want to include this idea that the school culture, so not just who we are as the individual teacher or who I am as the counselor or what's happening in the one classroom, but also the greater school culture influences a student's school experience. And so no matter what our role is in the building, we are a part of building that school culture, of a place that can be inclusive and encouraging and safe and, having high expectations for students, making sure everybody is supported at school, making sure everybody is seen at school. And all of that research tells us is linked to lower rates of dropout, higher rates of graduation, improved academic achievement. So our students are going to be more successful if we take the time to build a strong school culture. And I want to wrap it all up with this quote. I thought that this was perfect when considering Bronfenbrenner's model. It says, a teacher's influence doesn't stay in school. It goes out into the world and cannot truly ever be measured. Every student you inspire to do something great goes on to inspire others. There is no limit to your impact. I thought this was so fitting. If we go back and we look at the levels of the model, from the inside out, from the individual all the way out to the macro system, and we look at those bidirectional arrows, we don't exist in a vacuum. Everything we does has an impact. And I want to share that last because I think it is such a great privilege to be in a position to work with our students or to work with our clients. And I hope that you find that encouraging, and that, when you go back into your setting, you are ready to have a positive influence on those around you. Thank you very much.